Hi, my name is Craig Collins, and welcome to the What the Warehouse show. With me on the line, I have Gary Agajanian, Gary Ag for short, but Agajanian, and he's from Agajanian Wines. Gary, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. This is a great opportunity. Thank you.
Gary, please give our viewers the elevator pitch of what you guys do, because it's quite a lot.
There is quite a lot, but I mean, just to make it real short, we're a wholesale supplier of grapes and wine, a B2B business that supplies other brands and with the grapes and wines they name, predominantly supply out of California. So we're basically we would say a wine and grape negociant, a B2B business.
Okay, so you're able to source grapes for people making wines, and some of that is from your own vineyards, and then you're also making wines yourself, and then you're able to distribute other people's wines, correct?
Yeah, we're actually not doing any wine distribution as far as brands go and case goods. We basically get it from grape to the glass bottle, but the client who's got his brand. And there's been, over the last 3 or 4 years, we've actually served about 600 different brands. Last year, we served about 172 different brands with the grapes and wines they need. So we get it to the glass bottle, and some have their own bottling, and they'll get a bottle too. We'll just do the wholesale part of the grape or wine supply. But the grape supply is not easy. We've got people in the field, boots on the ground, that know the quality, know the vineyards. There's thousands of growers, and we're here to help define what the client wants and what quality level, and make sure it's farmed accordingly.
Right. Now, your backstory is quite interesting. You're a third generation winemaker and grower, right?
Yeah, so my grandparents came in 1914 from Armenia.
Right.
There was World War I going on, and there was a genocide going on, and with our, it's kind of a devastation of our country. But it got my grandparents over here in California, and my father's side of the family was in farming. I grew up farming. We were growing wine grapes, raisin grapes, walnuts, cotton, beans, watermelons. And the main thing was the grapes, and the wine grapes was my favorite. So that's what I ended up doing. But I actually had my first crop of watermelons when I was 16. I rented some ground, unbeknownst to my dad. I rented some ground down the road and used my dad's equipment, of course. But when the watermelons were growing up out of the ground a couple of inches, I took my dad over there to show him. And he was quite impressed that I could just start my own thing.
That's fantastic. What a great story. Gary, so obviously there may have been a slowdown during COVID, but your business is growing, right? You're experiencing growth in the business?
Yeah, we have. We had the COVID was kind of a double whammy for us. We were already on our heels. From 2017 to 2020, there were a lot of devastating fires in California that affected wine grapes. So many of the grapes we could not use to make wine. Some of the ones we took the chance to help the growers and make the wine. The wines, actually, 95% of them came out totally fine. It's just the market was scared of bottling, especially 2017 and 18. In recent times, we've got better techniques to test, to know what we have, and better remediation if there is any kind of smoke taint. So there are really probably no smoke tainted wines actually in the market, but buyers were very afraid. So we were down a little bit from 2015 till COVID. COVID hit. We were already like in a lower gear. We've got more efficient with our cost structure and the way we operate. Of course, less in-person meetings, more Zoom meetings. And so a lot of ways we're more efficient. So maybe it really kind of made us stronger. And yeah, we're definitely had our best year ever last year. And the markets are really good for the grapes right now.
I find that fascinating that almost everyone I interview, and we did a whole sequence of interviews at the Kosher Fest in New York, and everyone is seeing that growth. And yet on the back end, we're seeing the press and people worried about depression and recession, but yet businesses and a lot of businesses in food and beverage are growing tremendously. And I'm not sure if it's because of a number of people having dropped out of the market or just fairly strong economic growth.
I think there is people dropping out. Of course, when we get in hard times, whether it be a weather or economic in the agricultural business, you'll see generally the older guys who are ready to retire, it'll convince them to retire. So you'll see properties come for sale, wineries come for sale. And I think the other part is not necessarily strong economic growth. People are fearful of the economy we're going into, but what you're, I think, seeing is, okay, less players, but also segmentation of the market, where during COVID, you'll read that wine sales were up 80%. Well, 80% in the lower end wines, people went to drinking cheaper. They drank more and drank cheaper. The high end got really hit. Now, with the recovery from COVID, the high end is booming and the value wines are suffering.
Yeah.
So you'll see some people say it's pretty bad wine market. If you're under $10 a bottle, under 15 a bottle, especially, it's very competitive because they're also competing with White Claw and ready to drink beverages, craft beers, craft spirits, and those I think compete on the lower end a little bit more. So we're flexible in our business, and we grow grapes, but we source grapes throughout the whole state of California, Oregon, and Washington, so we can get supply wherever the market wants it.
Right. So tell me a bit more about that part of the business. So, what do you do operationally? You source the grapes by going into field, negotiating with the growers, but then how does it operationally work?
Well, typically we'll do grower contracts and have supply. So we'll have either a planting contract that may go 12 to 15 years of supply from a certain grower, or it'll be just a 3 to 5 year supply agreement. And probably a fourth of our business is year to year spot deals. But there's a lot of repeating deals. So we know the growers and find out what the clients want and go to the appropriate growers and purchase the grapes under contract and get them delivered operationally. There's some wineries that will send their own trucks, but mostly we're setting up to distribute the transportation of the grapes to the winery that it needs to be, or in one of our, if it's a winery client, goes directly to them. If it's one of our wineries that we contract space, I don't actually own bricks and mortar winery yet, but we have about 8 different wineries throughout California into which we process grapes into wine, and we'll obviously set up the deliveries for those.
Okay. So the grape goes directly from the farm to the winery. There's no intermediate storage.
Correct.
Okay, fantastic. And the demand side of the business, you've got wineries or winemakers who basically contacting you and saying, hey, I need this many tons of this type of grape. And is that how the demand works?
Yes. I mean, they'll give their request, whether it be grapes or wine, and we'll make it for them. If it's the wine, if it's the grapes, we'll identify, say, several choices for the client. And we'll guide them to the one they want to do, and we'll lock that source up for how many years they want. And we really help a lot of new brands get started too, because a lot of people new to the industry don't know all the growers, or even maybe have the expertise to know if a grower is doing the right job growing the grapes. So we have a full service connection. We're not just a middleman that says, here's a piece of paper that says you bought this, and who's going to deliver it, who's going to make sure the quality's there. We're like full service, make sure there's quality assurance going along with it. And we work with the winemakers. We have our own winemaker who can also assist new brands or even existing brands with enhancing their style, enhancing their quality, a different idea of blends. We've got some people wanting to add CBD to the wines. We have some people want lower alcohol wines. We have some people want no alcohol wines, and we can provide all that.
Fantastic, fantastic. And then once it's in glass, are you then shipping it unlabeled to someone, or are you providing the labeling service as well?
Yeah, if it's a private label contract or a control brand, they will give us the artwork and we'll have it put on. So the label put the way they want, but we'll order all the glass corks, capsules, put it all together.
What I find fascinating is that, and I've seen evidence of this back home in South Africa as well, is that traditionally, and the way I've always thought about wine, when I open a bottle of wine at dinner, I'm thinking that there's a winemaker behind this. He's grown the grapes, he's put it into the bottle, and he's made the wine. And I subsequently know how much of it is actually virtual, and how that's why there are so many brands out there. And actually, the winemaker hasn't made the wine. It's operations like yourselves who've got the expertise, the knowledge to do it, and it's clever marketing on the one side, and someone who's come up with a great brand.
Yeah, I think that's true. I don't know the percentage, but I think a lot of brands are put together by owners, business owners. They may have some wine experience or no, but I would say the winemaker's involved at some point, whether he's you or your staff or our staff, like our winemaker. He's done winemaking for 40 years, all kinds of large, small scale. Like he's like a walking encyclopedia of wine. Like he knows so much. I'm sometimes afraid to ask him a question because he'll have a long answer and very detailed, but he'll tell you what's going on. So it's really pretty awesome.
It points to the interesting fact that if I wanted to launch a wine, and I could come to a service like yourselves, and you could provide the full service, and it means that I almost relate it to self-publishing, or the new concept. If you want to launch a book, it's actually fairly easy to do it. And there are publishers who will do small batches for you. There's a full service available, even the distribution. And you're sort of right in that mix of being able to provide a service of producing wine.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
And I certainly didn't know how prevalent it was. And I'm sure that our audience doesn't know that it really has become almost like a service that you can get a wine made. It's amazing. Have you ever considered bringing in some pinotage?
I have, and I haven't really taken action on it, but that would be an interesting thing to bring in. I'm sure there's some other people doing it. But that's one where it could be an interesting project of maybe bringing it in barrels, and then we could bottle it here. So, there's different ways to do it. We could bottle it there and bring it in. I'd have to check out all the logistics.
Right. Now, I'm assuming there's certain regulations and requirements that that producing a wine has to go through. If I, for example, wanted to register a wine and produce a wine, there must be a whole lot of barriers to entry for me. And is that true, or is it something that you also deal with?
Well, it all starts, there's federal, state, and local rules, right? So basically you want to get a basic permit from the federal government, the TTB, Tobacco Tax Bureau, which used to be called alcoholic beverage, whatever. They changed the name years ago. But so there's production license to produce wine, to turn something into alcohol. There's another set of licenses for wholesaling, like taking someone else's wine, alcohol, and distributing it like a distributor would have, warehousing. It's a warehouse license. And then there's a wine license to sell wine. So it kind of depends on what level you want to be in. You could have all three, or you could just, if you let us produce it, you just need the wholesale resale license. So it's a federal basic license, and then the state governs the wholesale resale. However you're going to do that, they have their own set of licenses. And then if you're going to have a tasting room establishment or some premise, then that has to be governed by the locals. So
now, do you see a trend towards smaller batches of wine?
yes, I mean, that's actually been one of the keys to my business. I started in this business. I started farming over 40 years ago, but I started the wine business in 1998. So what do we had 24 years now? And what I noticed was, first of all, in the bigger picture with the bigger volumes and bigger wineries, there was a lot of contracts for grapes that were just verbal.
Right.
And that's great when you're in that kind of relationship business. But I noticed a lot of the business was getting taken over by the really big corporate wineries and buying other brands and getting bigger and bigger. They say, hey, we got to put this stuff in contracts. We got to write this stuff down. So I was very helpful to help a lot of growers solidify their deals in writing. So everything I do is on a piece of paper written down, because I don't know, the guy I'm dealing with at some big corporation, he may not be working there next year. I don't know. So it's great when it's owner and owner, farmer to farmer, all that.
Yeah.
And there's still some people that do that way, that kind of business that I work with. But so first of all, getting into writing, but then the other thing was, yeah, the big boys don't want to chase the small deals, the
Yeah.
small brands, because it's so little. And I've had a guy say Sauvignon Blanc in Lake County, and he started with 4 tons, and some people on my staff said, why are you messing with 4 tons? I said, well, maybe this brand will grow. It's a new brand.
Yeah.
And let's see what next year, about 50 tons. In 3 years, he was buying 400 tons. So it became a really good client.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and so, like, there was no one really serving these small guys. I still get compliments from people who have tried. There's mostly what we do is done by a lot of brokers.
Right.
There's brokers out there. See, we look like we're brokers, but we're actually negociants, merchants.
Right.
We buy the grape, we own the grape, we resell it. We buy the wine, make the wine, and sell our own wine. So we own what we're selling. And the brokers don't take any title. They don't really have a lot in the game, but we do. So we have to make sure the quality's right.
Right.
And so I still get compliments from people who say, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're in business. I'm glad you called me back, and that you're at least willing to work on my project.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
sometimes it's too small for the bigger players or the guys who need a lot of volume to make money. Like,
Right.
we'll work the small deals.
Fantastic. That's really cool. It sort of moves us on to just some of the sort of basic questions I have. This is a warehousing show, and it is about distribution, and so there's operations and business. What technology challenges do you have? Do you use any technology specifically? Do you have what technologies do you use?
As far as production, or
Anything. What systems do you use?
I mean, obviously we're using email, website,
Yeah.
things like that. But as far as actual production, we're using, I mean, we have all the, technical lab equipment that
Yeah.
can test wine and do all that. We use third-party warehouses for the case goods.
Right.
But we're really maybe not that sophisticated as far
Yeah.
as like capturing orders. Like, that's one idea, is we could capture maybe more online, get people in the queue, and then we're ready to serve them more quickly with a
Right.
kind of a questionnaire online kind of thing.
And in field, are you doing anything in field?
So in field, there's a lot of stuff for growers, as far as like testing the vineyards, as far
Yeah.
as water stress on vineyards and what water they need, nutrition testing. We're doing all that. If our growers aren't doing it, we're doing it.
Okay.
So all that kind of newer technology. There's growers that have weather stations and can, predict their water cycle, which is important as far as not only saving water, but really, there was a thing about 15, 20 years ago where they talked about deficit irrigating, right? A lot of California growers were overwatering, which, as you know, creates a
Yeah.
bigger crop, but it also makes the vine a little more vegetative, doesn't get the maturity. So the whole deficit, well, they took it too far, and they
Right.
weren't giving the vines enough. So they figured out, you got to give them what they need. Same with nutrition. We used to just give it NPK, nitrogen, potassium, and
Yeah. Yeah.
phosphorus, and now it's like, no, you dial in, you test that vine, figure out
Yeah.
what it needs, and you microdose what it needs. And
Right.
that's, you're not only not saving money, but it grows better because you're giving it what it needs, not too much of something it already has. So
Sure. Yeah,
it's
there's a lot to be said from what I understand in wine, in the wine growing is there's a lot to be said for also stressing the plant. And what we find and what I know about, and again, I'm not an expert, but the wine in South Africa, the places where it's a bit more arid, it's close to the sea but on a slope, those are the better wines because you get a plant that's actually had to struggle a little bit and it's sort of been stressed.
right. It's actually it's forced to stress, like Mother Nature and the soil make it stress, where you could actually do it on any type of ground
Yeah,
in any location, but where it's warmer on flatter ground, where it's very, very rich soil, it's just too easy to grow a big crop. It's great for growing
yeah,
corn and cotton and crops like that you don't eat.
yeah,
You can have a bigger crop, but wine grapes are about having a balance, not too much, not too little. I think
yeah,
every crop is like that, right? You
yeah.
give it the right balance.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember someone telling me about water. Funny enough, you brought up watermelons, but watermelons grown next to the Nile, where there's just so much water, and they actually lose some of their taste. They don't have that sweetness and the sort of depth of flavor, where it's sort of struggled a bit.
Yeah, the key on watermelon, there's two keys. I'm not going to tell you one because it's a secret I know to really grow them well. But one of the secrets is, even though it has the word water in it, watermelon,
Yeah,
when it gets to maturity, you really want to start holding back that water
right.
so it does go to maturity. Otherwise, the plant will stay vegetative. And if
Yes.
you get too vegetative, it won't produce a lot of watermelons.
Yeah.
It'll knock off the blooms because it's growing too fast. So you have to have a balance at starting a bloom. You can give it all the water you want when it's little, but once it's blooming,
Yeah.
that's when it needs the most water, right at bloom.
Right.
But after that,
You
you
want to
pull
reduce.
back.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're gonna, like you just said,
Yeah.
it won't have flavor.
Yeah, interesting. So I actually grew up on a farm, and although it was a dairy farm, there were some crops. And today, the farm, sort of, the farm that in fact, the farm the way I learned to drive was a farm called Krotepost, which is a wine producer today, and one of the better wine producers out of the Cape. Gary, it's been great to chat to you. I'm just taking a look at some of my prompts, and the wines that you produce. Are you producing a volume under your own brand, and they're available in the market? Where can I go buy some?
So our two brands is a less than 0.5% of our overall business.
Right,
So I would say we're probably just past the hobby stage. And it's small only because I haven't put the time and resources behind it. I've kept to the bread and butter of serving our clients and our growers, which
right,
is my original passion, was to really help our growers,
yeah,
find the highest and best use for their grapes and to help them. Like, I saw my dad have some struggles, so that's why I'm have that in my heart. And then, of course, in any market, the client leads the train, and the consumer leads the train for the wine brand. The wine brand owner or winemaker tells me what they want. So it comes on as far as that goes. But our brand, I have two brands. There's Agajanian Vineyards
yeah,
and there is Marmalade. And so far we're just distributed within California
okay,
because of the physical reach and the licensing. Like, it's easy to get licenses in other states, but before I do that, I've got
yeah,
to find the right distribution company. So we're actually in the throes of negotiating with a distributor. Well, it's a connection to distribution. So it's a guy who specializes in, he has 200 distributors that he has worked with during his career. So we're
right,
looking at hiring him to get our brand in
okay,
across the country. So you can order online at
right,
Agajanian. Actually, it's marmaladewine.com is
okay,
where you find our retail brands, marmaladewine.com. And then the wholesale business for grapes, wine, bulk, that is agajanian.com.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks for that, and we'll put that onto the notes on the podcast as well. So, really been great to chat to you, Gary. I've certainly learned a lot, and I think our audience will be delighted to understand a little bit more about, how the sourcing happens and where it comes from. It's been a great chat.
Great. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it. Great to meet you.
I really appreciate your time, and thank you everyone for tuning in to the What the Warehouse Show. And if you'd like more information on our solutions, hit up granitewms.com and go and take a look at marmalade wines and at Agajanian wines. So agajanian.com. Thanks, Gary.
Thank you.